Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another live session. As always, great to be here, and thank you so much for being here. Okay, well, let's slowly warm into these sessions. As always, we're going to just we'll go backwards. We'll chat about a couple things before we kick off. I'm a little sniffly today, so I might need to blow my nose a couple times during this session, but we'll get through it together. So, as you're coming into this live stream, just let me know that you can see and hear me okay. It's always cool to see where people are visiting from. We're really fortunate to have a really awesome global audience. So, always people showing up from random places across the globe. So, again, as you come in, if you want to say hi or let me know where you're visiting from, that's always fun too. Okay. So let's take a step backwards. As always, when we come into these live sessions, I want to go back before going forward. And yesterday's video, I'll always take a moment to highlight yesterday's video. I've done a lot of videos. I'm at like right around 500 videos, and I would say of all the videos I've done, I would argue that yesterday's video is as important as any video I've ever produced, and here's why. How is everything? When we think about our both behavioral and hypothetical answers, the only thing that really matters is how. And here's why it's so important. All the coaching that removes science and psychology is ineffective. We have so much data in 2024 on the science and psychology behind human behavior and how our brain works. And what happens on the behavioral side when you can tell them how you did it, and on the hypothetical side, how you would do it, and you really dive deep into the how, they're going to picture you in the role. Your likability is going to go through the roof, and you're going to get the job. And so, why do people consistently perform well or not perform well in interviews? So much of it is about the how. So, definitely take the time to watch that video from yesterday. If you can just dive a little bit deeper into how you did things and how you would do things, you will watch your interview performance skyrocket and go through the roof. All right, I'm 2.5 minutes in. I haven't heard anybody, haven't seen any comments. Please just let me know that you can see and hear me, where you're visiting from. It's always good to know that I'm not talking to myself. I know there's enough of an audience here where I feel like my mic's working and I'm not just chatting at myself, but always, again, those warm and fuzzies are really nice. So, okay. Hi from New York. Hope you can hear and see me okay. Thanks for being here. So let's just take a moment to talk about a couple of my services, and then we're going to dive in today. The purpose of all these live sessions is these are all Q&A sessions, but in our downtime, we'll talk about the return to in-person interviews. It's definitely coming, right? Like last week, we spent a little bit of time talking about return to office. So with a full-time return to office, we're going to see more interviews coming back into the office setting. And like, we've forgotten how to interview in person. So it's a really important subject. If this is your first time here, my name is Jeff H. Sipe. I go live 9 a.m. Pacific time every single Tuesday, new original long form content on Mondays. And then I produce shorts throughout the week, usually 1 or 2 additional shorts. I'm going to try and uptick that. I say that every week, but it's actually coming and it's on my roadmap. My business is practiceinterviews.com. I do one-on-one interview coaching, one-on-one negotiation coaching, and one-on-one strategy sessions. That's resume and LinkedIn review. I have an interview mastery course. And of course, we have this AI tool that we launched back in February, late February. And so if you're here today, I have a promo code. If you use the code in person, you get 50% off the tool. So just available today. I always want to throw out a promo, whether it's the course or the AI tool. And we are the revamp that's coming in the next month is just going to be amazing. Really, really excited. And I'm keep those changes kind of in the back, but we're going to be doing much more structured interviewing within the app. And we're just going to get all these bells and whistles that are going to be really effective for you to improve. Anything else? No. If you like what I'm doing today, smash that like button. And if you've never subscribed, again, 9 a.m. Pacific time, Tuesday mornings, and new original content on Mondays. So let's dive in. As we warm in again in our downtime, we'll talk about the return of in-person interviews. Slow on the comments to start today, so I'll try and fill the time the best I can. Hi from NYC. Thanks for being here. Hi, when do we follow up with a Google recruiter after the last interview? So we always follow up. Well, if you haven't heard back in 5 business days, follow up. That's a good amount of time. I know that feels like a lot of time, and it's too much time to wait between hearing back, but 5 business days is a great way to do it. Now, I'll always just kind of throw this up really quickly. If you don't hear back for like 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, this is their support email. That's going to go to an overseas team, and that overseas team will poke the recruiter if you haven't heard back. I had a recent interesting scenario with somebody who reached out to this team, and their recruiter's still not getting back to them. That's extremely uncommon. This team will poke the recruiter and say, "Hey, like, do your job," and then the recruiter is supposed to do their job. But typically 5 business days, and I like that rule not just for Google but for any company. If you haven't heard back in 5 business days, it's totally acceptable to check in. That's enough time to go by where like interview feedback should be completed, etc. So, good rule of thumb. I hope that helps. Hey, from Virginia, it's sunny. Yes, it is sunny in San Diego. We have had at the beach I've lived on and off at the beach here in San Diego for 20 years, and some of the weather this year has just it's been weird. Water temperature dropped. We got a lot of gray. It's been a lot of gray this year. It's been crazy. But glad it's sunny there. It's nice. Um, you are welcome. Okay. So we're really slow in this session today, warming in. So as you come in, remember any questions, comments, everything's on the table. I'm here to help and answer anything. 4 comments in, 7 minutes in is pretty slow. So I'm going to go a little bit slow as the comments come in. You'll see me slowing down, but I'm here to help. Okay, let's got a couple more coming in. This is awesome. Okay, great. What is the minimum for HC quorum for non-tech roles at Google? Andrew, this is a great question. Quorum has changed over time from what I've heard. Quorum used to be 4. And if anybody's kind of curious, they're like, well, what is quorum? Well, quorum was just what's the minimum number of people in hiring committee needed to make a decision. So I've seen quorum for certain non-tech roles be less than 4, sometimes 3. It's really role specific. I know that this is changing. It can be different group to group, even when traditionally 4 was quorum, like way back in the day. I even had a unique team where we could do quorum at 3. So it can be on a case by case basis. Let me know if you have more questions. Typically, historically, it's been 4, but I know that they've been more lenient in more recent years. Hi, what are some tips to remember for an in-person interview? Yeah, so okay. Well, let's kind of dive into this. We'll dive in and out of the in-person interview, but like we've forgotten a little bit what it's like to be in the same physical space in that more formal interview setting. So there's some real keys, right, to in person. Let's kind of just have some fun. I haven't even talked about this in so long that I'm going to wing it. Obviously, a lot of this, all the lives are just totally ad hoc. But when we go to in person, remember your in person starts with the people who are not in the interview process. So that could be the receptionist, that could be interacting with like a security guard. Just be gracious and kind and nice to everybody. People notice. Okay. So just as you come in, like be gracious and kind. Don't show up too early. Right. So like showing up like 15, 20, 25, 30 minutes early, like it puts pressure sometimes on the interviewers, on the receptionist. It can be awkward. I would say show up about 5 to 7 minutes early. And if you did have a longer commute to get there, whether it's public transportation or you drove to the interview, when you get there and you arrive and you get settled in, say, I'd really love to use the restroom, because then you want to just make sure everything looks good. You use the bathroom, of course. So, kind of that 5 to 7 minute time frame is going to be really, really good. If you get there earlier, just chill out outside, go to a cafe, chill out in your car, whatever it might be. But when your first interviewer comes to pick you up, stand up, smile and look at them while you're shaking their hand. So this is the other thing that we need to bring back. We are physically touching people again. So when you shake their hand, one of the things I remember from all the interviews is, first of all, not too hard of a handshake, not too soft. You want that kind of like nice medium pressure on a handshake. And if you are one of those people who gets sweaty hands, I know this is like crazy that we even have to talk about this. It's just been so long. There are like a bunch of online like powders that you can buy and stuff like that. I've never had sweaty hands, so I don't know, but like I know that can create some simple upfront anxiety and fear. And so there are products on the market that can help you with that. And then as we get into these interviews and build up that physical space, remember, now that we're in somebody's physical space, we're exchanging energy. So we got to think really positive, bring that positivity in. And then we're going to use more mirroring body language. If they lean in, we're going to lean in a little bit. If they lean back, we'll lean back a little bit. We just want to notice their gestures and practice some mirroring. And that's stuff we would do via video, but it's weird. It's like we haven't done it in so long. I mean, we haven't had in-person interviews for the most part in over 4 years, which is just so crazy to think. What a different world we're in now. So these are a few high-level tips. We'll keep going and talking about these things as we go through, but those are some high-level items. But your body language is critical. So shoulders back, chin up, no slouching, no fidgeting are going to be really important items to remember as we get back to this in-person interview world. In-person interviews come back. Does that indicate good indicator for the job market? Not necessarily. I just think that you're going to see in person coming back. We're hearing that it's coming back a little bit more. It hasn't really triggered and kind of gone to that next step of everything being back in person, but we're just hearing small percentages of it going back in person. The other thing to remember with these in-person interviews, it's a lot tougher because you got to commute, but they're also going to stack your interviews. So I think what we didn't realize during COVID is we could do one interview and then have a day, or we'd do one video interview. We'd have hours in between. Now we might have to stack 3, 4, or 5 interviews together. That is incredibly difficult for your brain to work at that capacity for that amount of time and be on point and on top of things. That's why practice obviously is so important. But just something to keep in mind that it's going to be more challenging going back to in person, just because we're not used to it. We got a little spoiled, and so that's okay. We'll just have to work through the steps to get back to it. My husband has an offer from big tech on the table and is waiting for Google, his top one. Does it make a difference to let the recruiter know when to follow up? Does it make him more desirable? Well, the biggest thing is recruiters cannot help you without information. Nobody can help you without all the data, right? And that's why when we communicate with others, more and being concise is really, really critical. So when you get another offer, you definitely want to let your recruiter know and say, hey, just want to let you know I have another offer in hand. They're pushing me to decide by X date. And like, okay, we can see if they can do anything, but they definitely can't help us if they don't know. And it's just another item to note to be proactive. The more proactive you are in terms of just letting your recruiter or hiring manager or point of contact know that you have active other interviews, that they're going to the on-site stage, that they're going to the offer stage, that you have an offer, it lets them help you. So it's really, really important. So yes, Your husband should absolutely let that Google recruiter know that he has an offer in hand and needs a decision to come up pretty quick. Google moves slow. A lot of times the recruiters don't take this urgency seriously, but the reality is that they can move pretty quick if it's a candidate that they really want to hire. Okay. Okay. Had my first in person last week for the first time since 2020. It's like retraining an atrophied muscle. Andrew, 100%. Yeah. It's like, I get it. It's weird. I mean, I'm just kind of laughing here and thinking about my business. I've never actually met with a client in person ever. Now the business started online pre-COVID, but the vast majority of my business has been done during COVID. All my clients, the thousands of sessions that I've done have all been via Zoom. So yeah, it's really kind of strange. Like we've forgotten what that's like. And so the best way to get prepared for that is to simulate it. Get in the room with a friend, a significant other, a current or past colleague, and go through the motion of that in-person interview. Yeah, it's totally an atrophied muscle. Like we got to retrain, right? And so there's a lot of things that we want to be keeping in mind because we got so used to having the comfort of our business on top, casual on the bottom, having our cheat sheet down below that we could reference, and all those things were positives for us. Now, the positives of in person, and people may or may not like this, but the reality is that we are made up of energy. There is an energetic exchange when we meet with people in person. The other piece that we haven't talked about in so long and is so crazy, using a whiteboard. So when you get a challenging question, you're going up here and like how to talk to them, be at the whiteboard here and kind of turn and face them. It's just something that I strongly recommend for in-person interviews is using a whiteboard, especially for hypothetical answers. It's like we haven't even practiced that environment in so long that it can feel really, really awkward. So I love your analogy. I think it's spot on. Hey Jeff, so TM, think we're referring to team match, stop after a few TM calls after the first few months and still not matched. How long are the interview results valid and what to do? TMing stops. Thanks. Okay, so specifically for anybody, we're talking about the team match phase for Google. And yes, this is pretty common in terms of what you see from a timeline perspective. Like normally there's a bunch of team matches right away, and then those team matches slow down. And so typically it depends on the role. Usually your interview feedback stays valid for at least a year, sometimes up to 18 months. It is very role and team specific what they're willing to take into account. But with team matching, the reality is that we need to stay on top of it. And not expect the recruiter to do the work for us. I know that that's a terrible thing to say. They should be on top of it, but they lose momentum. And so the best thing to do is every week or two, just send them one role with a link to the role, 3 to 5 bullets for why you're a fit, your availability to chat, add an updated resume. Add an updated resume to that's role aligned, and then the best way to contact you, even though you got that contact info and you've been working with them, it's just a constant reminder. And sometimes what happens is they're going to forward that on to the appropriate person. If they can just forward it on, it makes it easier if all the information is in that email. So but yeah, it's like team matching will definitely slow down. And that's a bummer, right? Like, because we got to that stage for a reason, because we are good. And just remember in the team match, there's a reason why I stand up for these lives. I have more space, more presence. Tone of voice is a little bit deeper, a little bit better. So keep those things in mind too when you're going into team match calls. Great enthusiasm, excitement, and make sure that you're asking about them. Really, really important. How important are external credentials versus job experience for TPMs? Is it worth the time for a PMP, etc.? Okay, let's talk about it. Will those get you the interview? No. A PMP isn't going to probably, unless it's a unless it's a minimum requirement, which we rarely see for a PMP, especially for a TPM. But here's where it does add value. It adds value from a knowledge base perspective. And so, what do I mean? Well, that knowledge can definitely be applied on the job, but it can also help you in terms of how you organize your answers in a job interview. So, you're always going to see me defaulting to saying, like, hey, certifications, taking classes, any sort of learning that's going to improve your skills. I'm always a fan. Continual learning will always set you apart. But will this actually get you in the door? Probably not. Yeah, it's not going to be enough to get you in the door, but there is value. And then, of course, on the other learning side, I know I'm going on a tangent here, but on the other learning side, I actually don't recommend degrees or advanced degrees that much. Maybe a degree gets you in the door, and there are some advanced degrees that are very specialized, but like a more general MBA or general master's program is having much, much less impact in the job market than it used to. And it won't give you that additional uptick in comp like it used to. Now, of course, if you're going to Wharton or one of these elite programs, maybe, but that's more for the alumni network, and you'll pay. It'll be over $100,000 a year. So just something to keep in mind. What trends and data have you seen supporting a rise in person? Haven't done one in this job market yet. Well, it's more like what is the word I'm looking for? It's more just kind of what I'm hearing, and of course, like Andrew just validated that he had an in person, but it's not like it's not a huge trend yet. But just with return to the office, it's just a natural progression where we're likely to see more in-person interviews. And I'm just hearing it. It's kind of like through the grapevine. And I don't think that we're at 50-50 or even 70-30. It's still probably 95% remote or virtual, 5% in person. But we'll see that trend. It's just happening more now because we're so far removed from the big part of COVID, even though people are still getting COVID, of course. So I just think it will continue to trend in that direction. With AI help building resumes, are there any places on a resume you would try to stand out or be different to hook the recruiter? Okay, this is a great question. Yes and no. All right, let me address those. So, yes, the best way to stand out is a bulleted summary. And the best way to create a great bulleted summary is using a large language model, whether it's GPT or Gemini or Claude or whatever you prefer. You're going to throw your resume and the job description into that LLM and then say, hey, create 5 to 7 summary bullets that align specifically with my resume and the role. Keep those bullets on one line or less and make sure the details are very specific. Creating a role aligned bulleted summary is really impactful and helpful because you put it at the top of your resume. So what it says to the recruiter is, oh, wow, Brenton has all this stuff that aligns with the role, and you're putting it right at the top, and it's actually stuff you have because it's aligned with those 2 items. Then they're probably going to keep looking more. Now, I want to talk about the second thing, like trying to stand out or look different. That's a different item. So sometimes people think like the creative or funky resume, it's like, oh, I'm really going to stand out. Here's the challenge. Like we've learned in most languages, we learn to read left to right from a really young age. Recruiters, hiring managers, they're very used to seeing resumes in a very standard way. So when we try to get creative and place things in different buckets, and that's why like the sidebar resumes where there's some information here and there's information here, in my opinion, are terrible. You're making me do so much more work to find the information because it's like a little bit more creative. Bulleted summary, traditional resume. It's boring. I get it, but boring works. Is it normal that my recruiter is withholding my interview scores for a non-tech role after asking? Yeah, very normal. And remember, so much of this is, regardless of the organization, can be a little bit of like a personality type or like how much they want to share with you. So, like in my time at Google, for example, I would never share any interview scores with anybody ever. I just, it was a confidentiality thing. I didn't believe that I should be sharing scores. I could just say, oh, collectively you did well, collectively you didn't do well. It didn't really matter. So um, it's not strange. It is normal, but some recruiters will be very transparent and others won't. And it's a little bit of a style. I think they should be giving you an idea of, did you do good or did you not do good, right? But like the actual scores themselves, I think are less relevant. We always want the data, right, Andrew? Like we always want that information. We're just not always going to get it. How have you been? How have you seen successful candidates use cheat sheets in person interviews at all, if at all? Don't. Yeah, I mean, there's you can't. You have to prepare in a different way for an in-person interview, and cheat sheets, I wouldn't use them in an in-person interview. That if you had notes, like you were handwriting down on a blank piece of paper, sure, of course, that's fine. But if I saw that you had a notes section next to it, I would just instantly fail you. Now, again, are all interviewers going to do that? Maybe, maybe not. But yeah, you can't use a cheat sheet in an in-person interview, unfortunately. That's what makes it harder. Hey, Jeff. I was here last time as well. Okay, awesome. Just about filing a doc with work history and transcripts, etc. You mentioned it was for HC this week. The recruiter mailed back with the team matching form. Okay. I was told by the recruiter that this info on the doc is used by senior engineers for evaluation. The timeline was 2 days after the on-site recruiter reached out with this info. Okay. Then 1 week later, I got the form. When asked if the senior engineer evaluation is done, the recruiter responded with, the evaluation is part of the matching process. Can I assume I cleared HC? No, I would not assume that you cleared HC. Team matching, almost always, look, it varies, and you always want to just ask that direct question. But team matching almost always comes before hiring committee, because once you're matched with a team, the hiring manager can write a strong statement of support validating why you're a good hire, and that benefits you. Now, if it's a slam dunk, if you just crush the interviews as a recruiter, I'm just going to take you to hiring committee because I don't need to do anything. Like, you're probably going to pass hiring committee. You may not even need to go to hiring committee if you just crushed everything. Sometimes that step can be skipped now. Just ask your recruiter. They should be really transparent and be providing more upfront context and information. I don't know what's wrong with Google recruiters, and everybody knows I'm tough on recruiters, but it's just like this transparency. I just can't believe that candidates don't know if they've been to hiring committee or not. Like, that's something you should definitely know. And if they haven't stated it, chances are you haven't. I would assume that. With AI resumes bringing up the baseline of most resumes, are there any places you would recommend trying to stand out or different? Oh, from what most resume advice or AI tools? Yeah, it's the summary section. Again, we want to think about the logic of the summary section. Of course, you got to hit on those keywords to get past the applicant tracking system that's going to filter out people who don't hit on those keywords. So you're one of those resumes that hits. When I get into that resume, I want to see that summary section. And, there are a ton of companies now that will create a resume for you create LinkedIn profiles for you. I mean, they're endless. And I know because I'm targeting them as B2B clients for my AI tool to add a service. So there's like hundreds of them out there. But I would continue to say if you have a strong bulleted summary section, it's the first thing I see. Just make sure that the bullets are very specific and they don't go over one line. That will make them jump off the page. Okay, we are at the 30s. So I'm just going to take a quick moment at the 30s. I always spend 30 seconds just highlighting my services. If this is your first time here, my name is Jeff H. Sipe. My business is practiceinterviews.com. I do one-on-one interview coaching, one-on-one negotiation coaching, and one-on-one strategy sessions. That's resume and LinkedIn. I obviously have that killer interview mastery course, which is still getting great feedback 2.5 years later. The AI tool has been out for 7 months now. And if you use the promo code in person, you'll get 50% off that AI tool today. I go live 9 a.m. Pacific time every single Tuesday. New original content every Monday. And then I'll do some shorts. I don't know if anybody saw this, but YouTube, what's today? The 8th. I think it's like a week away or maybe closer that YouTube's going to allow shorts to be up to 3 minutes. So that'll be interesting. I'm going to do some slightly longer shorts. It's really hard to fit in all the content in 1 minute or less. So that'll be fun. We'll see what happens with that. Hey, Liz, thanks for being here. You survived the storm, obviously, which is good. I know there's another one coming. So sorry. Yeah, it's terrible. Wrapped up my interviews, RRK, GCI, JNL for TPM role 2 weeks ago. Unfortunately, was told by the recruiter that while feedback was positive, the team will not be moving forward to an offer. Fortunately, I was able to connect with a different hiring manager who is hiring for TPM, and he mentioned that he would like to interview me for his team. New recruiter says I just need to complete one RRK. Yep. Is this a good sign? How much feedback from my first team will be used for this second team? Any tips? This is definitely a good sign. The other interviews were definitely positive. They will all be considered. Even the other RRK, just overall your interview performance and skills, it will be considered. Any tips? Yeah, you got to crush this interview. I mean, there's no sugarcoating it. You have to make sure that you absolutely do anything and everything to be successful in this interview. Because if you really crush this interview, this hiring manager is supportive of you, you have a good chance of getting this role. And the other thing I absolutely love is that TPM roles for Google are paying fantastic right now. Anybody who's interviewing for a TPM role, you should be negotiating like crazy. Those roles they've really upticked in their comp at Google. So I would say just all stops, right? Practice like crazy, prepare like crazy, do practice interviews, use tools, do whatever you can, because this interview is a make or break. Quick update. We'll survive Milton. Oh my goodness. Okay. But the barrier island's not looking good. Re-interview feedback. Haven't gotten any. How do you suggest approaching my recruiter to see if there's a path forward? What do you do if you see a second role is actually a better fit than the one you just interviewed for, but on the same team? Okay, Liz. So you definitely, if it's been the 5 business days, you definitely want to reach out and check in a really gracious and kind way. Then you want to say, hey, this is weird. Or like, hey, I know that this may be not perfect, but I also saw another role on the team that I think is a strong fit. And I don't know what your process looks like, whether I should be maybe interviewing for both roles, if you want me to just focus on this role. So it's really about soft tone and just saying, hey, like, I don't know because we don't know. So, but it's worth mentioning, just tread lightly, but I'd rather have you communicate that than not communicate it. Because if it's a really good fit, we don't want to forego that opportunity. But I think last time it was like you were going to have that interview, and I believe it was supposed to be Thursday of last week. So we're not quite on 5 business days yet. Again, I don't know if you were able to actually conduct that on that day because of the hurricane. So or maybe now maybe this was a week and a half ago. My brain can't remember, but yeah, I think if you haven't heard back, it's time to follow up. I have a first 45-minute phone interview, technical interview with Google tomorrow for a SWE role. What is the only advice you would give me? For a SWE 3 role technical interview. Yeah, it's like when I think about interviewing for SWE roles, it's it's really the simplicity and core foundational SWE knowledge that typically plays well in those interviews. So data structures, algorithms, like the basics. Sometimes it can feel like going backwards, but I have found that understanding the fundamentals and basics is a huge part of having success in those interviews. And consistently, that's what I hear about those technical interviews is get down to brass tactics, basic fundamentals, because that's what they're gonna target. I hope that helps. Yes, Andrew. Does HC typically happen on a particular day of the week? Yeah, and depending on the role and how popular it is, maybe multiple times a week. So, like for a program manager, there might be a Tuesday HC and a Thursday HC, right? So it just depends on the amount of openings for that particular job type. But yes, are they typically meeting at the same time on the same day or days during a week? Yes. And that is my biggest confusion with Google recruiters since I left. I would tell my candidate HC is meeting at 10 a.m. on Thursday. HC ends at 11 a.m. on Thursday. Depending on where you're reviewed in that process, I am going to call you right after with the result. That result could come at 10:05 and I call you at 10:06, or that result could come at 10:59 and I call you at 11, right? But I would always tell my candidates the exact time, and I would always say, you are going to get a phone call from me right after I know the result. Why that doesn't happen 100% of the time, I don't know. And people say, oh, I don't want a phone call. Well, maybe the candidate doesn't want a phone call, but as a recruiter, I'm going to force you to take a phone call. Why? Because if you don't pass, I want feedback on the interview process and like how I could improve, how the interview team could improve, how the hiring manager could improve. So I'm going to force that phone call. I did a LinkedIn post about this about a year ago, and I got tons of negative feedback, people saying they don't want phone calls. But as the recruiter, I'm going to take ownership and make sure it's a phone call. Just my 2 cents. I go on tangents on that one. That one just always surprises me. I can't have done just that. My best advice is to get a good night's rest, stay cool, and be prepared for anything. My coding interview was like nothing like what I was advised to prep for. With coding interviews, it's just so tricky. It's like you don't know what they're going to throw at you. But again, like I can tell you for a company like Google, it's really fundamentals and the basics that they look for. How far back in time is worth looking at job postings? When would you skip applying since the job is too stale? That's a really good question. I've never actually really thought about this. I don't think I've ever been asked this question before. I mean, if it's still up, then clearly there's a need and they haven't been able to find the role. Let me actually give you a slightly different piece of feedback. I would definitely be looking at job postings that are only on the company site. When it's posted by a third party and it appears to be stale, it actually might not exist anymore. But if it's still on the company site, in theory, it's still available. In theory, we don't know that, but always go to the direct to the company site. Like going through third parties, I don't recommend it. I know that's not a great answer, but I hope it helps. Hey, Jeff, what are your thoughts about a company transfer to another country? Any insights will be appreciated to convince for a move? Well, depends on the scenario, right? Like, if you're being forced to transfer, it's one thing. If it's your option to transfer, especially working in a different country, that can be really exciting for future job prospects to know that you've worked in different markets. So, everything we relate to our own personal journey, we experience life through our own personal experiences. So, I think I share this quite a bit. I tried to move to London with Google, and I had three different opportunities. Two kind of fell apart, and then the one that was going to move forward just didn't work for my wife and I at the time, and so I didn't take it. But in retrospect, there were things that mistakes I made. I should have taken my wife to London, because when I actually did take her there right before COVID, she absolutely loved it. So that would have convinced her, because I had been to London before, that it was a good move. And then secondarily, I should have been more open to the salary hit, because it just would have been amazing to live in London. But the way companies look at international experience in different countries, it can be really favorable for your career. So it's definitely something you should consider. And obviously, there's a lot of considerations. But like with Google, that was really cool. London's a really hard place to get a work permit or work visa or work sponsorship. So really, really unique opportunity that, again, if you're working for a big company, it's sometimes a cool opportunity. Follow up. I do have a competing offer from another tech company. How quick do you think Google can get back to me after completing the last RRK? Okay, so this is the one additional one. On the other hand, do you know how long the other tech company, ThinkFang, can keep their offer active? Well, Google can move fast, but you got to put the pressure, right? How long can a tech offer stay valid? Well, there's tips, there's tricks, right? So every conversation you delay, like you keep trying to negotiate, you try and add in an additional conversation with a hiring manager, skip level, team members. Usually you can delay a FANG offer by at least a couple weeks by using these kinds of tactics. Those tactics work. Okay. So, definitely just some tips and tricks, but try and build space and try and go slow. Thursday of the previous week. Okay, Liz. Yeah, it's time. Yeah, thanks, Liz. Your input's always helpful. Hey, Jeff, is the scheduling of the interviews indicative of how well a person is doing the process, e.g., waiting for G&L schedule? Well, what we've seen, Michael, I can give you just like the tiniest bit of context. Like, again, as we get back to in-person interviews, you're just going to be thrown into the full gauntlet. You're going to have to do 2, 3, 4, 5 in the same day. The beauty of virtual interviews is I can assess the feedback and decide whether to stop the process or move on. So if the feedback was really poor, I probably wouldn't schedule that next interview. But if it was decent or good or great, I am going to. So I think it's a good indication. I can never say 100%, but usually it's a good indication. Best advice is to be super present and not worry about the outcome. That way you can field curveballs and not panic or get thrown off if something doesn't look like any leak code problem you've seen. Yes. Our breath is everything. If we cannot control our breathing, we cannot have success in an interview. Remember, this is the science and the body chemistry and what happens in our body. If everybody watching this live session were to take a deep breath, you will notice how calm you get from one deep breath. So breathe, take your time. It's always okay to say to your interviewer, I'm going to take 1 minute to gather my thoughts. Will all interviewers like that? No, but you're not doing it for them. You're doing it for you so you can get settled and feel confident. So remember to breathe. Hey Jeff, I applied for a data center tech role. I had strong positive feedback on all my tech onsite interviews and googliness per my recruiter, but I'm still stuck at the role and fit calls with the hiring manager. Okay. What if no HM shows interest? Will that be a dead end? Why don't the tech roles doesn't travel to the HC as the SWE roles do? Why is it only based on the HM decision to move on with my packet? Well, DC techs, I've seen I've seen it go both ways with DC techs, that some go to hiring committees, some don't, as recently as very recently. So if there's been a change, I'm not aware of it. Maybe there has been. Um, what I do find with these DC tech roles is like there's a lot of opportunities, and you pass the interviews, and sometimes the team match stage can just take a little bit of time, but I see a lot of success for people who pass these interviews. Just remember, the process is different role to role. That's changed over time. So I would just say keep at it. And when you get into these conversations, just stay positive and excited. I know it can wear people down, but you have to go into those conversations engaged. And remember the science and psychology. People love to talk about themselves. So, what do you love about the company? What do you love about the role? What's your favorite part about the team? What's the biggest challenge? Or, sorry, what's the coolest thing you're working on in the data center space right now to the extent you can share? Love, 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 cool. It's going to leave them with a positive impression of you. Liz, you're right. I should take it as it is. If it's game day, no matter the outcome. Yes, absolutely. You understand me perfectly. Okay, this is awesome. Yeah, I love it. Thank you. I love the back and forth. Like again, I feel so fortunate to have this community that is extremely positive. We talk a lot about tribes and like what's the tribe we want to have, and like this tribe is super positive, gracious, kind, helpful, and I've seen the other kinds of tribes, right? And it's like, this is the tribe I want. So thank you too for the positivity. My recruiter resigned after the first on-site interview. What can I expect now? Um, I'm appearing for an L role for the first time at Google. Don't want this opportunity to go to waste because of my recruiter resigning. Okay, so I'm going to follow up here. I don't want that to happen either. Have you been assigned a new recruiter? Like they resigned, so somehow, some way, you must have been given that detail or information, or they shared that information. So I would be curious if you've been assigned a new recruiter. My willingness to relocate since applying has changed. If Google was willing to give on location to one not listed in the original job posting, will they have to repost the role for compliance reasons? No. Um, no, here's the other thing. Like, there's this, like, we see all this stuff with RTO, and like, we're just thinking, oh my goodness, I have to be in the office, I have to be there. Um, it depends. Some hiring managers will be a little bit more open, a little bit more flexible, and it really depends on their leadership path of whether you could take that role remote or not. And things do change. And so your whole goal is just to get to the end of the process. And then when they want to make you an offer, say, hey, things have changed on my end. Would they be willing to support the role in this office location? Would they be willing to support the role remote? And then with relo, look, we all have big items to consider with relocation. And I always tell people and want to come in with the lens and perspective that when I reload from San Diego to be in the Mountain View office, that while I had a couple of complexities, I did not have a mortgage, I did not have children, I did not have a pet, right? So those are like three big ones. I did leave my wife in San Diego and we kind of worked it out, and then eventually she moved up to the Bay. But that was challenging, but again, not as big of a challenge as some of the other challenges that most people have in life. So I always want people to consider whatever they can do to make that relo happen, because obviously the value of a FANG company is priceless, and sometimes we just have to go so far outside of our comfort zone. Um, but at the same time, sometimes relocation is just not possible. So get to the end of the process and then go from there. But your only goal right now is to get the offer and then see how things happen. I hope that helps. Not yet. I've mailed candidate support. They told me they will reassign, but no updates till now. My first round on-site results will still be considered, or I will have to give it again since the recruiter is no longer there. The recruiter resigning has absolutely no impact on your results whatsoever. So nothing to worry about there. You're just concerned about hearing back, having a point of contact, et cetera. But the recruiter leaving will not impact things in regards to your interview performance. So for my FANG offer, not Google, the recruiter has maximized the band total TC as the last offer he offered to me. Is this true or is he bluffing? Well, I can't say whether or not he's bluffing, but the best way to find out is to push back. When we get to the maximize band total comp, it's just really important to remember. Let's use a really easy number. Let's say the all in total comp is 200 and they say, this is the best I can possibly do. We're not going back and asking for 250 or 300. We're going back and saying, hey, if we can just get to 217.5 in year one, I can accept this offer. So you do want to go back and push back and try and negotiate one more time. The good news is that FANG companies don't rescind offers because you negotiate. You're going to want to be very gracious and kind. Say, I think we're getting really close. And if we can just get to X, I would strongly consider the offer. I'd sign the offer. I'd really hoping that you can advocate for me. That's how we know if they're bluffing. If you push back one last time and really get after it. Hope that helps. Have your L3 SWE Google interview in 2 days. Your content has been extremely helpful. Thanks. Thanks for the positivity. I love just people coming in and giving positive comments. The SWE stuff, we've been talking about this quite a bit. Get down to the fundamentals, the foundational coding items. They're going to come up. Data structures, algorithms, like this is the common stuff that comes up in these SWE interviews. And at the L3 level, you're going to have coding. You're going to have coding interviews, and then you're going to have the googliness and leadership interview, and that'll be it. So on the GNL side, that's where I'm good because I'm not technical. But the GNL side, just make sure you got a few of those great behavioral answers prepared, and that you're ready to tackle decision-making, collaboration, and inclusivity-based hypothetical questions. Hey, Jeff. I asked you in last week's live, but I have my interview feedback. Okay. I have a good interview feedback. However, the HM choose another candidate. What can I do to leverage my interview feedback for other roles at Google? Well, it depends on the role, right? And so you want to look at roles that are like or similar, but not the same exact role. And then you have to try and identify those on the career site. And then I would share those with my current recruiter, but less is more, one at a time, and not more than one per week. Otherwise, they're just going to shut down on you. So you send them the exact link to the role, 3 to 5 bullets for why you're a fit, your preferred contact info. I know that's ridiculous, but you're just going to resend the email that you're sending it to them, and your phone number, your availability over the next 2 weeks, and an updated resume that aligns with the role. You're basically just changing out the summary. You will do that every time. Will that recruiter actually go to work for you? It's a little bit of an unknown. We never really know if they're going to put in that work for us, but it's something I want you to do. I hope that helps. I don't know if you are told this enough. What you do in this space is golden. Um, well, thank you so much for the positivity. I mean, I do get a lot of positive feedback, which is really, really nice. I feel extremely fortunate for all the positive feedback because, you know, I just think that there's so much, like, especially on LinkedIn, I think about all the, like, the nice messages I get. I get a lot of messages where people ask for stuff and it's not specific, and that's tough. I even did a LinkedIn post on that, I think yesterday, um, but I do get a ton of great feedback, and I sincerely appreciate it. And here's the great news. I can run a business based on what I do, but 99.9% of people consume my content for free. So it's like this great thing where if people see tremendous value and they want to purchase my products or services, they can, but the vast majority of people get it for free. And that's really cool. That's been a cool part of this journey. How long this journey is going to go, I just don't know. But I'll keep doing it. And the plan is for a while. I had originally thought about maybe shutting down this YouTube channel this year, but I think that's not the plan anymore. I think I'm going to keep going. And I'll obviously keep this audience updated as anything, if anything changes in the near future. Jeff, you're welcome. When Google recruiters ask candidates for internal Googler references, what information are they asking to those Googlers and how is it useful to the hiring packet? Might answer this question slightly differently. Um, Slightly differently? That sounds weird. Um, I want to take a step back. Internal referrals will help you only a little bit, but they can hurt you. So I actually want to provide the coaching that if you do know Googlers, just make sure that there is no doubt in your mind that they're going to say fantastic things. And so the questions are like, what's their experience working with you? Like, are you the best person they've ever worked with? Like questions like that. It's going to be really, really simplistic. It's not going to be anything really super robust, but sometimes they can help you get over the edge if hiring committees close, but more often than not, they're not helping you that much. So if you do provide them, provide maybe one, two, or three of people you absolutely are 100% certain are going to say great things about you. Anybody who you have any doubts, don't do it. It will kill your packet instantly if you get a bad reference. Hey, Jeff, I had the RRK, GCA, and GNL for a CE role last week. Thoughts on providing the same scenario in different rounds? Does this have a negative impact? No, I don't. I think people get a little concerned about repurposing behavioral answers because remember, the core question is different. So the action should come across as a little bit different. So no, I wouldn't be too concerned about repurposing answers. I think that's fine. The only company I would worry about that is for like a company like Amazon. They like to have a lot of unique answers from the last 2 years, but at Google, I worry less about that. Hey, Jeff, please keep this going until I find a new role. Yeah, and again, I mean, everything is, again, I like to be as transparent as possible. The second that the B2B component of the AI product starts taking off, that will probably need to be my focus, and I might move away from doing one-on-one coaching and the YouTube work in general, but that hasn't happened yet. So I'm still here, still doing the YouTube stuff. Seriously, the weekly checking in really helps. Sound advice, positive energy, and adds to the flow of the week. Going to sign off today. See y'all next week. If I have power, I hope you survive. Please, Liz. I know it's just been tough in Florida. Yeah, it's just been crazy. So stay safe. 100% on what Liz said. This is super helpful. It's like the weekly coaching and therapy. God bless you. Yeah, thank you for being here. Yeah, sometimes we just, it's kind of funny. One of the things that I talk about with my negotiation clients, especially, is with them, half of it's the half of it's the coaching on how to negotiate, and half of it is therapy, just to make sure they feel comfortable and confident and calm when going into those negotiations. So there's a little bit of therapy in there for sure. I did not find a way to have your AI tool give you RRK questions. That's the tool's default. So when you add a job description into our AI tool, GPT, which is what we run on the back end with our backup system being Claude if GPT goes down, but GPT primarily, which hasn't really gone down, will actually create role related questions. And so you can see the difference. If you say, start practicing now or jump into practicing, that's going to give you just generic questions. Whereas anytime you put in the job descriptions, it's going to be RRK based. Watch the trends of those questions. Those are definitely role specific because we built the system that way. Yeah, Andrew, thanks for the great engagement. That great analogy, atrophied muscles. I love that, and just good overall. Please continue to come back and keep us posted on how things are going. Okay, we are right at the 30s and out of questions. So I'm going to go ahead and start to move into wrap up mode. If any additional comments, questions, anything comes in, I'm happy to answer them. But I'm gonna roll into our wrap up here. So just today, 50% off promo code in person. If you use that promo code, you get 50% off of our AI tool. I still do one-on-one interview coaching, one-on-one negotiation coaching, and one-on-one strategy sessions. That's resume, LinkedIn, networking, anything anybody needs. Still have that killer interview mastery course 2.5 years later, still getting great feedback on that. I go live 9 a.m. Pacific time every Tuesday, new original content every Monday. And I'm building out a bigger short strategy. And again, YouTube shorts are now going to allow up to 3-minute shorts starting next week. So you'll see a little bit more longer form shorts coming out from me as well, which is going to be super, super fun. If you like what I did today, smash that like button. If you've never subscribed, consider subscribing. Great session today. Thank you, everybody, so much for being here. And I'll be back next week. Thanks so much.